Pango, Pango, this is Cessna 30771, departed at 05. 771, and Jay Prochnow, flying his little Cessna Agwagon 300, is now above the open ocean, headed from American Samoa to Norfolk Island, 1,600 miles away. The cruising speed of his little Cessna is about 100 knots, so it's going to take him nearly 16 hours to get to his destination. He's topped to the gunnels with fuel, and he knows he'll have enough, providing things don't go wrong. He looks down at the blackness of the sea, and in his headphones, because it's pretty noisy in the aeroplane, he can hear far away to the east other aircraft being called. Foxtrot Bravo India Uniform Zulu calling Papeete, request clearance. Papeete Tower, you are cleared to land, and all this sort of things coming through his headphones. And as he's drifting away there, flying across the darkness, suddenly the sun comes up. A shaft of light comes across the ocean from behind him and to the north, and he's thinking, wow. And gradually the darkness gives way to light, and suddenly he's looking at nothing but a vast expanse of blue ocean in every direction, not a speck of land in sight, not a ship, nothing. He's flying along there, and he's feeling pretty tired because it was late nights in San Diego, long haul across the Pacific to Hawaii, and then on to American Samoa, and he hadn't had a lot of sleep. And he had to fly the plane, no automatic pilot. He's flying along there, and after a while, the sun reaches its zenith, and then it starts to come down on the other side towards him. As it grows lower, he puts on the sunglasses, and he realizes that he's now, if he's on course, roughly about 2 hours away from his destination, which is Norfolk Island. That's the time that he switches on his automatic direction finder, and he's listening in his headphones for the call sign of Norfolk. Eventually he picks it up. NF, NF, NF. And he looks at his automatic direction finder, and sure enough, it's exactly 220 degrees. And he thinks, wow, it's right ahead of me. No worries there. And then he relaxes back, and once again he's listening to the traffic of other aircraft, talking to ground stations in the area, conversations which would have gone something like this. Sydney, this is Qantas 274, we're Halibut at 30, flight level 330, on top broken scattered cloud, estimating Mako at 0420, and all this sort of stuff will be going on. And he's listening away there, half asleep by this time. He's really tired. And then all of a sudden, he realizes something is not right. Something's not right. His pilot's intuition kicks in. What is it? What is it? The aircraft sounds all right. Fuel gauges are showing okay. Temperature's all right. Okay, now what's wrong? He couldn't put his finger on it, but he knew there was something wrong. And then he realized. The NF, the call sign of the ground station at Norfolk, the NDB, should have been getting louder as he approached the island. It got louder for a while, and now it was getting softer. He realised that he'd passed the island. He'd passed it. He'd passed the place he was bound for, the home. The bird trying to find the home. Had he passed it to the south? Or had he passed it to the north? He didn't have enough fuel to fly on to Sydney. If he'd passed it to the south, and he turned south to look for the island, there was nothing there. There was not enough fuel to reach New Zealand. And if he'd passed it to the north and turned to the north to find it, the same thing. He'd run out of fuel. He was in desperate straits. He tried various pilot techniques to work out where he was. I don't know what they were because I'm not a pilot myself. I was a ground air operator, the man on the ground. He realised eventually that he couldn't find where he was. And that's when he made the call. Mayday, mayday, mayday. Mayday, mayday, mayday. This is Cessna 30771. Cessna 30771. Any station reading me, please come in. Now, being an old air radio operator myself, I know what would have happened when a mayday call come through. There'd have been chairs falling all over the place as people scrambled to answer the mayday call. And of course, stations listening in were not only aircraft but ground stations. Fiji was listening in. New Zealand was listening in. Sydney was listening in. The first to answer was the New Zealand station. Cessna 30771, this is Auckland Air Radio. I'm reading you loud and clear. Go ahead, your mayday details. And that's when Jay Prochnow started to put out his details of where he was, where he thought he was, because he didn't really know. In Auckland, they would have immediately put on a distress phase and started to man the search and rescue station. The man in charge, the search master, would have had other air traffic controllers around him, and he would be talking, finding out what he could about the little lost aircraft. Now, the messages which came over the air would all sound full of confidence. But the true situation was different. The conversation would have been going something like this. This Cessna 30771, he's got Buckley's chance, mate. Look, he hasn't had a fix. He hasn't had a definite fix on the ground since he left American Samoa. He could be anywhere, mate. He could be anywhere. He's gone to the north. He's gone to the south. Where is he? Where is he? And this was the situation. The chances of finding that little aeroplane were very little indeed. But it just so happened that in those days, in the old days of the teleprinters, that message, that SOS message or Mayday message, which went out over all the radio circuits, all over the place. There were teleprinters chattering away in offices all over the Southwest Pacific. And it just so happened that one of the teleprinters was chattering away in the air radio station at Nandi Airport. One of the communications officers immediately tore off the SS message and sent it up to the tower, and where it was read, of course. But at that time, something was happening on the ground at Nandi Airport. A very experienced pilot by the name of Gordon Vetz. Gordon Vetz had been an airline pilot since 1946. He'd been a flyer in the days when they were using flying boats, and they used to use sextants to shoot the stars to work out where they were. He was now a senior captain of Air New Zealand. And at that time he was on the ground at Nandi Airport, walking around the base of a huge DC-10 wide-bodied airliner. There were 88 passengers on board. It could have taken 300. And as he was walking around, his co-pilot, Arthur Dovey, was doing the various instrument checks up front. The tail fin of the plane would waggle like this. The airlines would go up and down. But Gordon Bett was walking around. He sort of casually kicked the tyres, and then he came up the metal stairs at the front of the aircraft into the flight deck. As he was coming up the stairs, one of the senior air hostesses, Katrina Morrison, said, Gordon, do you hear that the strike is off? The strike's off. Oh, well, that's good. Now, what does this mean? We all know that if there's going to be an industrial dispute, a very opportune time for unionists to threaten a strike is just before Christmas. And this is what had happened in Auckland, New Zealand. Not only had the handlers gone out, the luggage handlers, but so had the refuelers. And because the refuelers were out, Captain Gordon Bett had decided that he would fill the DC-10 right to the top with as much fuel as it could take. Now you might wonder about that. You might think, well, don't they do that with every aeroplane? No, they don't do that. They don't do it because fuel is heavy. Fuel is very heavy. So they take, generally, when you go on a flight, say from Sydney to Melbourne, they don't fill the aircraft right to the top with fuel. They fill it with enough fuel to get you from Sydney to Melbourne and possibly to an alternate aerodrome if Melbourne can't be landed because of some problem, and statutory reserves. So in other words, they don't fill the aircraft up because it costs them money to do so, the airlines. But in this case, Gordon Bett had filled the aircraft to the very top. As Katrina Morrison said that, Arthur Dovey in the right-hand pilot seat turned around and he said, oh, Gordon, we're not going to take that lot off again, are we? We're not going to take that off. Gordon Bett says, no, mate, we'll go with what we've got. And on the strength of that, deciding that he would leave Nandi for Auckland, topped up with fuel, rather than take some of the fuel off, made all the difference as this story begins to unfold. You'll hear more about it in part 3.